Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today guys, we're going to be going over what I learned from solo queuing to Immortal, as well as what worked for me and sort of how I got there. This is going to be my way of sort of sharing my experience, the tips that I've learned, and sort of what allowed me to solo queue to this rank. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy. And remember guys, if you do enjoy this content, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe. Really helps me out, and I hope to see you back soon. The very first thing that I realized that I had to do, sort of one of the tips I think I give to a lot of people as well, is that you need to play to your strengths. So in this situation, for me, what I found is that I need to play in the positions that I'm comfortable in. I need to use the guns I'm comfortable in, and to play the play styles that I'm comfortable in. So one of the really important things to me, especially playing at the higher ranks against very good players, is to make sure that I was playing in the right position. So sometimes certain people would ask me to do things, and maybe I would just sort of play with them the way they needed me to, but I wasn't used to that. So I sort of started going back more to playing what works for me, and that I'm just more comfortable that way. You know what I mean? So for example, on Bind, I like playing U-Haul. I had people pulling me off U-Haul constantly to do other things. That didn't really work for me. And the second I went back to playing what I was comfortable in, playing what I felt strong at, I started doing much better. And I think that that's something that a lot of people need to just understand, is that if people are telling you to do these crazy things that you know you're not strong at, don't do them. Just continue to play, your game to the best of your ability. Now, in conjunction with the last thing I just said, is that you should be playing agents that you're comfortable with. This is a big one, particularly for newer players, but just kind of everyone in general. At higher ranks, you'd be surprised how often people are willing to give up the agent that they feel very comfortable on in favor of going someone like Sage. They play Sage and they really don't do anything. I mean, they are bad at Sage, particularly for our rank. And what ends up happening is they just sort of rely on, using their ultimate at the right time. In most cases, they never use their ultimate. And then it's just all aim at that point. In those situations, I think we can all agree we'd rather those players, or if it's us, we'd rather just be playing on the agent we're comfortable on. And I think that's a big thing people have to remember, is that you should never be too strict to the meta. It actually ends up hurting you in a lot of these situations. So for me, I pretty much only played Brim. I feel pretty good on the stage, so I played her here and there. I think maybe two or three of my games. But for the most part, I just played Brim because that's what works for me. That's what I'm comfortable on. Now, my third tip or talking point here is about the economy. And that's to not force buy too often. Don't continuously force. And sort of on that note, the Shorty is one of the guns I was really undervaluing. I got some insane value out of it in a lot of my games. There were times where I had no right getting a kill, but because of the way I was playing and how aggressive I was playing, using my smokes on Brim, on save rounds, I was able to get kills with Shorties that I should have never have been able to, which sometimes turned the tide in those rounds and actually allowed us to win save rounds. This still happens in Immortal, by the way. So don't give up on save rounds, on eco rounds, whatever you want to call them. Make sure you're still trying to actually win those rounds, even with your crappy pistols. It's totally doable. You hurt the enemy economy and you get a chance at getting some guns out of it. A lot can be gained on those eco rounds, so don't just throw them away, and don't constantly force up and spend all your money when your team isn't. It's really important that you work with your team. And if one person is force buying, everyone should force buy. So don't be the guy that forces every round. Now, number 4 here is to communicate a lot. This really is where I sort of found my stride, I think, is that if I wasn't leading the team in terms of, calling strats, I was making really good call outs. And that's just something a lot of people at the higher ranks end up doing, but you can start doing that at lower ranks and help your team just the same amount. I pretty much called everything I could. And the reason I did that is because it's so important that your team is all on the same page. I mean, I literally made a video about callouts because that's how important this stuff is. And it's just like, I don't understand why people would want to be silent in ranked. I know there's those fringe cases where, there's toxicity for the way you sound and things like that, but do your best to try to call out. It's so important that everyone is on the same page in these games, and sometimes you're the only person that can hear something, or you're the only person that knows something just happened. So you have to make the call to help your team. Another thing that really worked for me here, though, with communication is that I sort of assumed the strategist role. I became sort of like the in-game leader in some of my games. I made calls, I made strats. Some didn't work, some worked really well. But either way, I was forcing the team to play together, and that's a big part of how to succeed when you play ranked. And my fifth tip is to stay positive. And this sort of comes into like a mindset sort of ideology. Is you have to have the right mindset when it comes to ranked, because it's really easy to tilt, and it's really easy to tilt on your teammates because you're seeing all their mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are costing you rounds and hurting your score, and you're getting more deaths because your team makes a bad play. It's really important in those situations to not sort of lash out against your team. Also, don't lash out against the enemy. That's not cool either. One of the things that I found that really worked for me is that I never really ever ran into too much toxicity. I ran into it maybe once or twice, and in those games I did obviously speak up against it. I had like some people harassing me just about taking their agent or something like that, and I put an end to that pretty quick. But man, my games were really, really positive, and I think it's because I was just talking so much in them. There wasn't really room, and I was always saying good job and all that kind of stuff, just being a nice teammate, right? And there was no room for other people to come in and start attacking people. It did happen, of course it happened. You can't stop it completely, but man, my games were overwhelmingly positive. And I think you can play a huge role in that just by encouraging your teammates, and it just helps people play together, and forgiving people for mistakes and things like that. You know what I mean? It's really, really important. And it really helps you grind those long hours too, so you don't like end up giving up on just humanity after the end of like a ranked session. Now, coming in at number 6 is to constantly check for enemy ultimates as well as the economy before the round starts. This was big for me, especially as a Brim player. Our ultimate is really, really damaging to people who find themselves stuck in certain positions, whether in a cubby, or in my case, I play U-Haul a lot. U-Haul on bind, also known as lamps. It's really, really easy to get ulted by a Brim there and die. In fact, most times Brims will actually ult in the very start of the round, and I have died to them myself, and I feel like an idiot. All I had to do was check the top of my screen or the scoreboard. So hitting tab in these situations, really big. It helps you realize, like, for example, Reyna, you want to know when she has an ult. Sage, you want to know when she has a res, because that way if you kill someone early, to pay attention to if the Sage is going to be there to try to res, and maybe you can try to stop it. On a different note, but in a similar vein, right, the economy. Check to see how much money the enemy team has. Do they have at least 3,900? That way they can buy armor and assault rifles. If they don't have 3,900, do they have at least 3,300? 400 for the light armor, and then 2,900 for the rifle. It's really important you understand this, as well as ops. Do they have at least 4,500? Whenever the enemy team has at least 4,500, it means that someone on that team can buy an op. Whether they have armor or not is up to if they want to give the gun to someone else. But it's good to know that sort of stuff before the round starts, so you can actually change up your play to match the information that you have. And then coming to number 7 is I adjusted my play constantly to sort of the style or the caliber of the enemy. So either how they were playing or how good they were. I played a lot of very, very good people, including pro players, including ex-CSGO pros, Overwatch players, things like that, who are very, very talented. And a lot of the times I would just lose 1v1 duels straight up at range. I just could not compete in some rounds against these guys. So what did I do? I stopped peeking them. You know what I mean? I stopped feeding into their strengths, and I started playing closer angles that allowed me to use my good reaction times and crosshair placement. And that started working for me. And it's one of the most important things to realize is that you need to mix things up in your games. You can't constantly do the same thing, or you're going to become too predictable. So it's really important that when you're playing really good players, or you're playing people and you feel like you're just constantly dying, doing the same thing, switch things up a little bit. Make sure that you're playing in a way that suits your strengths and not your enemy's strengths. All right, guys, and now I just wanted to quickly go over a few more things, just really quick, that I thought were super important and really helped me sort of get to Immortal with the least stress possible. First really was about not peeking oppers. I just stopped. I won so few duels against oppers, especially at range, especially on ascent. Oh my gosh. I just gave up on that. I use my utility. I let my teammates flash them, things like that. Stop dry peeking them. Also, on top of that, I constantly learned the maps. Just because I feel really confident doesn't mean I know every single thing about the map. I constantly learned new angles, different ways to play certain positions, you know, how I can sort of fall back and play a more passive mid on ascent. That was huge to me in sort of developing and getting better. And then on top of that, you know, I constantly changed the way I was playing. Like I said in tip, I think it was number 7, right? Like I don't want things to be telegraphed to the enemy. So if I'm playing something and it's not working, I had no problems trying to change it up. So it's really, really important that you're constantly looking for ways to improve, and you're not sort of getting into that routine of where you run to the spot, dive, run to the spot, die, run to the spot, die, and you're like, oh no, you know, I could have aimed better. I could have, no, like you could have played the entire thing differently. Like you didn't have to run there to die. Why don't you stay back this time? Why don't you play more passive? Why are you running mid every round dying? You know what I mean? So important things like that where you have to sort of be able to self-diagnose a little bit and be like, hey, this is going wrong. Say, okay, why is it going wrong and how can I change it? So that's what I constantly did. And eventually I sort of got into a rhythm and I just kept grinding. I'd have, you know, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. And suddenly I started winning a little more. And I'm getting better and better and better. And suddenly the Immortals weren't that good to me anymore. And suddenly I was hanging with them. You know what I mean? So in the end, I think it was just a big combination of just continuously trying to improve. And the list of sort of tips, I just really kept them in the forefront of my head and paying attention to everything that I could and just, you know, always trying to be better. And eventually, hey, got me to Immortal 1. My next task, obviously, get to Radiant. We'll see if I can do it. But, you know, this was no small feat. You know, solo queuing is not easy. And if you have any questions about anything I just talked about or just solo queuing in general, more advice, I'm more than happy to answer it. So with that being said, guys, I think we'll end the video here. You know, leave a comment. I'm more than happy to help you guys out with any questions you have. As always, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like, of course. It really does help the channel, and I really appreciate it. With that being said, guys, I hope you have a great day. I hope you're still grinding and ranked and, you know, getting the ranks you want. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. Take it easy and peace.